I'm Aaron Davis with Fast Pinball. This is our little inaugural kickoff of our PinDevCon endeavor conference get together. Our goal is to make it so that we can get a lot of people who are interested in building and making and creating things in pinball all into one place. June is beautiful in the Northwest. Great reason to come out. We want to pair this with the Northwest Pinball Show, but really, people have been asking for some engaging ways to get together, roll their sleeves up, and do a little bit more than just, share information, shouting back and forth on a noisy floor in front of our booth. This is going to be a little bit of free form, but the main goal here is to kind of discuss a bit about what these 2.0 projects are called. And so we don't call them 2.0 projects. These are conversion kits. So the idea is that you're taking an existing game, an existing cabinet that has had game code running on it since we were all children, maybe even earlier than that, and give the opportunity to put new game code, new rules and stuff like that on it. And so this was a concept that has been around before FAST existed. And part of what I'd done a long time ago, it's probably 2014, was pitched an idea to Planetary Pinball, who manage all the Williams Bally licenses and stuff. And I said, you're going to make all this effort to try and keep people from taking advantage of your IP, or you can give people a path to legitimacy. And so back then, the idea was like, we'll make hardware that plugs into the existing games, and we'll do the part that's going to say these games need to run and be stable, and they can keep their existing game running the way it was originally, so they don't lose a game in the process of adding a new game. So way back then, like for any of you who followed along with pinball history and drama and stuff like that, with different parties involved, there were different companies way back then that were going to do these conversion kit projects. And for whatever reason, those didn't work out. We all just kind of stepped back from it and let it kind of coast for a while. Fast forward all the way to, I think it was at the end of 2019, Rick Bartlett from Planetary Pinball called me up and said, hey, I think we want to do that thing you talked about. So I don't know if anybody can hear on top of this. This is my first experience on the mic with a loudspeaker on top, so we'll let that go. But the whole goal with these 2.0 projects was really getting it to the point to where we could release product in a way that was not a burden for the license holders. Because again, these projects, your total addressable market is the number of games that were actually made at one time. So that's a small group of people. And so when you look at most licensors, they want to license product for the most they can make, put it on bar stools, towels, everything, lunch boxes, and sell as many as you can. So the model of the 2.0 project is challenging right away. Anyways, back to what I was talking about with the 2.0 projects. This is an interesting cross-section of like software, hardware, electronics, business opportunity, creative, game development, like all sorts of things. And so back to the license holder topic was, the money to be made for the license holders on these things is not super huge, So our goal was to make the process of getting electronics, getting boards, and getting things into these games as streamlined as possible. So the idea being that the license holders need to make sure that everything, shows logos correctly, gives credit appropriately, all that stuff, doesn't have swear words and profanity and nudity in the project. That's kind of the threshold there. It doesn't damage the brands owned by Scientific Gaming, who took over all the Williams stuff. So there's that whole set of responsibility, and that can be pretty simply handled. You can imagine that if every one of those projects that was being submitted to them also included some random set of hardware with some random computers and some alligator clips to plug into things, that's going to go nowhere. So really what we had pitched in the past was the idea of let us kind of be the equalizer of what the physical platform looks like. So we've got our own goals as far as the things we've wanted to do with what we call our retro platform. So the retro platform is new electronics put into existing games to bring new life and stuff to them. So we felt that if people are going to do these 2.0 projects, they need to make sure that the existing game still plays as good as it did originally. So that's where a lot of the effort that we've done, Dave Beecher with all the electronics, Eli Kurtz with all the emulation, made sure that putting these boards in the game, it plays the way that it should. And one of the interesting things about that too is as the byproduct, we've got the ability to create these replacement CPUs. So we've been able to create hardware that goes into existing games, run emulation just right. So now we've got a product that can replace the existing games, but then building upon that, allow people to create these 2.0 projects. So the 2.0 projects themselves, there's been projects in the past, like the Bride of Pinball project that was out years ago. You've probably seen the Funhouse, Rudy's Nightmare project, the Whirlwind, Total Chaos, the No Good Gophers projects. There's a bunch of them over in the Planetary booth you can take a look at. But really, what we've found in that process was that there's a lot of work that it takes to pull these projects off. And so what we're trying to figure out how to do is make this process as streamlined as we can. And so there's, I guess, and I'm kind of winging it here. So, a lot of these concepts and stuff like that are the goal is to kind of refine this stuff into something that we can share more universally so people know what they're getting into. Because I think that with these 2.0 kit projects, these conversion kit projects, there's a lot that goes into that. So the first kind of thing that we're looking at is you're going to have a board set they're going to put into a game. And so what we've done over the last few years is worked in tandem with some of these existing projects that are now available commercially to purchase. But we had to go through the process of tuning up the hardware and software for the WPC89 platform, the WPC95 platform, and System 11 platform, and on and on and on. But our goal by getting that stuff figured out is we can get that platform as dialed in as we can, kind of universally, but then you start getting to title-specific things. So you may have some nuanced things in a fun house, for example, that like we'd never dealt with before. So a lot of that stuff ends up being things that we can put our boards into games that kind of work the kinks out. But then when you get a new game with new code on top of that, that's going to have its own unseen issues that we never have seen before. So part of what we really want to make sure that we can do, and this is what made it appealing for Planetary to work with us on bringing these things to market, was we want to make sure the engineering is on point, that the electronics work the way that they need to, that the software can be deployed in a way that was manageable, maintainable, and updatable, and all that good stuff. But that was just basically the beginning of it. Because what we found is that, like, as people were making these projects, you would have games and kits that basically just worked perfectly in these development titles. All the different games that we'd seen, everything worked good. But then you start spreading that out further. And you got to remember, these are new electronics and new games going into, 30-some-year-old, 40-some-year-old games at some point, pinball machines that people were convinced worked perfectly before they put the kit in it. And so what you'll find is that sometimes through that process, we'll uncover new weird ways that we've never seen the games have been hacked up before. So that's the kind of thing that even though you can go and do all the testing you can to get your game all in order, that there still has got to be a big support window that goes out from there. So a lot of people have followed along with the Rudy's Nightmare project that Pedretti did. And you follow along on Pinside and you see a lot of people sharing their experiences where they put the game in their kit and something didn't work, something was odd. It has really helped us see, okay, we got to make sure that everybody gets diodes in their games fixed. Because again, you may have had a game that worked perfectly according to you, but maybe it never actually worked perfectly all along. But now you notice there's some places to tune it up. So even in those cases, you find the ways to get people to get their games all up to date. And we usually encourage people to get their game into 100% like location ready format. So if you took that pinball machine, put it at a barcade or at a entertainment center, it should be able to be running independently that whole time before you put the kits in it. And even in all those cases when people have their games totally tuned up, one of the, again, unexpected things that came up with the Funhouse one was we found that like in Funhouse, there's 2 switches on the ramp, and in the original game code, they do the same thing. But in the 2.0 game code, they were treating it as like 2 separate switches with separate meanings. So some people put the kits in their game and it was fine. Others put it in and something was weird about it. And we didn't realize that, like, I think we'd figured at some point I'd counted up, I think maybe 15% of the people that had kits had the switches wired differently from the factory. So nobody would have known to find that until we put that out in the market, got people actually like installing it and then sharing this stuff. So anyways, like, I guess I'm just kind of sharing a lot of this just as, a big dump of information of what we've kind of experienced so far. And then I'm going to kind of go into what I think makes a lot of sense to try and organize and get more streamlined with this going forward. So we've had a lot of people reach out as these projects have gone to market and said, like, how do I get started with this? And so we haven't been selling the board sets that allow people to do that publicly yet because, supply chain challenges. We were queuing up everything to support all the commercial projects that were being released or, pending to be released. And so now, as we're rolling into the summer here, we want to get these projects back out, these kits out to people that they can start to do the DIY project on themselves. So the goal would be that, maybe you don't aspire to create a commercial product, but you do want to create and write some pinball code and try some things out. So if not everybody who's interested in like writing code and building pinball is attracted to the idea of building an entire pinball machine themselves. So there's that idea of like having to start with cutting wood and bending metal is not, everyone's strong suit. So you may have a pinball machine in your house or at your workspace or something like that. Our board set could give you the chance to put it in its place. The game still plays fine, so none of your buddies are going to be upset that you made the game not work for a while. You can swap back and forth and actually start writing game code yourself. So that's going to give people like the chance to start tinkering with. So we kind of look at that as like kind of the DIY category. Because right now, like the aspiration to go from, I want to make a product like a Rudy's Nightmare or like a Total Chaos or something like that. It's a big leap from I've never written pinball code before or worked with existing pinball machines. You've got to kind of start someplace. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to start there. And so this is what, part of our summer goal is to get these things out, get it documented and support so you can get a game, put it or get a board, put it in your game and start to tinker with that. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun for people who've just, again, wanted to get into this, but didn't start with building their own homebrew project from the beginning. So getting onto the business side of this thing, this is where, again, there's a lot that it goes into making these projects. So it's not only just a matter of like coming up with a game idea, you've also got to look at like, what does that whole business opportunity look like? So there's a lot of layers here, and I've been just revising this list all weekend as people have been asking more questions that I haven't had to answer before. So we're just going to kind of see where this goes. So few sides of it. There's obviously like the licensing side of it. So again, creating a product that works well with these existing brands, we should all be striving to do that anyways. We don't want to put a project in that makes these things look worse. I think that also too, a lot of people look at the 2.0 projects as something that say that make the game better, And what I try to remind people of is that it's not necessarily to finish the game or make a game that was already there better than it was, because a lot of people love these games as they are. So we should try to tell people it's having another game experience basically on the same platform. And so you'll see that there's, people can take different takes on things where like with the Rudy's Nightmare project, one of the things that I'll say this along with it. One of the things I really pushed for in the beginning, I had two rules. One, you shouldn't lose a game in the process, like I said. So the emulation of the original game's got to be perfect. The other thing was like, you're not making the 2.0 game. You're making Funhouse Rudy's Nightmare or Whirlwind Total Chaos, like that kind of thing. Because the idea of this 2.0 moniker implies that this is the game now finished. And really, potentially you can even have multiple titles over the years on the same platform. Maybe there's, years later, Pedretti decides they want to do Rudy's Fantasy Vacation or something, and it's a whole new adventure built on the same hardware platform, same pinball platform, but it's a whole new game story and stuff. So that was like a big deal too, and that also helps with like promotion and marketing of your property that you're developing, with your work with the license holders and stuff. So really, like what we've been trying to do too is, for some people who want to make games, you're coming from game backgrounds where you've programmed, mobile games before, you've made board games before. The idea of creating an interesting, fun experience is something you're familiar with. I think that what we're really encouraging is treat it like any other license approach. You would make a pitch. You go to the license holder and say, "Hey, I've got this great idea. I want to take a high speed. I want to turn it into a road rally race, cross country. We're going to be racing city to city. You're going to meet interesting characters along the way. And this is how I think I could make a really great game on top of this platform." And so what we're really trying to do is encourage people, instead of saying, "Hey, what does it take to get the license?" Look at it from the other side and say, "Why would you be given the license?" And I think that just kind of puts people's work and effort in the right place. Like, make the pitch. Come up with a rules doc. If you can't come up with a rules doc and it seems like too much work, please stop now, because you have no idea what you're getting into. There's so much work ahead of you that the idea of planning something that you can get excited about, like Lynn did a presentation yesterday talking about his process of doing Haunted Cruise and the rule docs, coming up with what would be a cool game. You're basically describing what that is and then working towards implementing that. So working through a rules doc and a pitch is really what's going to show the license holders, okay, this is somebody who's actually thought about this, has an idea and a vision that they want to bring to life. So that's something that's like worth supporting, And I think that, so again, like kind of refining this process, I'm saying make a pitch, like come up with a game and a title that you think would be cool, and come up with what would be that elevator pitch. This is what I think would be super cool. Pitch that to the license holders, and I think there's got to be other steps along the way. We talked about optioning titles and things like that. Like right now, the process of going and securing that title is too big of a leap between actually making the game. So what we're trying to show people is, if you start from an idea, you get the license holder on board, you kind of want to hold that game, But but if you look at it from the license holder's perspective, like to hold a game for what, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, like somebody else would probably be waiting to go and do that title themselves. So we're really trying to kind of get some structure around that. So the idea of, again, like I said, think of it as like going to make a pitch for your grand idea, work out an arrangement to option those titles, get approvals, and then you got to get to market. So what I also want to outline too is a little bit about the economics of the stuff, because when you go and build these kits, it's not just you know, software shoved into a game and hope it works out. You've really got to start thinking of all the other things that go into this. You know, it gets into like, you know, which PCs or single board computers are you using to drive this game? Usually that's dictated by what do your screen assets look like? Are you going to be pairing this with Unity and have real-time dynamic graphics? Or are you going to be playing slideshows or things like that? It's the PC that goes into the system really is determined by what your screen and audio assets need. So you're gonna have the PC component, you're gonna have a fast controller that basically interfaces to all the existing games. You're gonna have an audio amp system and speakers that goes into your speaker panel, because again, remember the existing games had audio amplification that was already in there, sound commands and stuff like that. Now what we've had to do is work to emulate those audio systems and give you an interface that says, I want to play the existing audio and then new audio at the same time. So now you have to have a new audio amplification in there, which we've created a fast audio board that was designed to kind of, you know, be an interface to play. We introduced new software controls to control volume and things like that, mixing the things so we can have a subsection and main speakers, but also at the same time, it gives us the ability to use the existing game as a way to turn that on and off. Because we tell people, again, you should add a new healthy 12 volts to the system. So obviously in most games, there's a service outlet. So you plug the service outlet into a nice 12 volt supply. Our audio board also acts as an interface to distributing that 12 volt supply to what would be to potentially powering your LCD screens. But we also use an enable signal that goes from our controller to turn that on and off. Because what people have described before is that some of these other like projects have required power to be always on in these cabinets and things like that. So we said, okay, we'll give you a healthy 12 volts. We'll give you the ability to, when the system turns on, our controller turns on, we'll enable the power on the audio board. The audio board will turn on the amplifier, which will turn on your LCD screens. We've really tried to look at it as like, these are the problems we hope you don't need to solve. You know, if they exist, we can say, here's a good recipe for a configuration of hardware that we think will give it the most stable, the most consistent to deploy option. Why not go that way? And obviously, if you have a better solution, like, we'd love to hear it. But the bottom line is that like there's a physical cost that goes into these things. So like I said, the PC that controls things, the fast controller, the audio amplification, healthy power, speakers, displays, maybe translights. I mean, all of a sudden we've got a big laundry list of stuff that goes into these games. It's not just put a new board into it and run some code. So you'll see that like that is going to lead you on to, so I talked about the physical goods there. Now we can look at the non-physical goods. You're going to have a programming budget. You're going to have animations, music production, testing, more testing, beta testing, all that kind of stuff. All that thing takes time and energy and effort to manage all those things. So, you know, when you look at what it takes to pull off a project like this, there is a lot of time and energy put into, again, creating the great game, but then it also gets down into how you're going to source and build these kits that are actually going to go out to market. So we've tried to look at it as like, what are the things that we can standardize as much as we can so that you're not having to, you know, browse all over the internet, buy random LCD displays, you're trying different audio amps and things like that. We're going to tell you the things that we think are best practice guidance for this stuff so that your project has a great likelihood of being a good, solid kit when it goes out. Let's see, I mentioned the support end of things. So really when you look at, hold on, I made another page on this. Let me change this. So let me talk about from like the whole, like, I guess we call it like the timeline of things. You know, you're going to go and build and design your game as a one-off, you yourself. We have for the 2.0 projects that have existed, the conversion kit projects that have existed, we strive to bring those games in-house ourselves so that we can kind of be doing our own testing kind of in parallel with you. Again, you work it on your single game, you by yourself in your house, in your workspace. That's an N of 1. Very easy to get that thing perfectly tuned up, but you want to start spreading that over more games. So we strive to do a lot of that stuff in-house as well. And for the first batch of games that have come to market, and some are, you know, pending, near coming to market, all that stuff, we've been able to kind of work out all the things that we want to do on the platforms themselves. So it's not only just like, here's a Funhouse Rudy's Nightmare. In that process, we worked out all the kinks on the WPC 90 or 89 platform. So again, putting our new boards in there, we got to kind of road test that in real time as new projects were being developed. That won't be as much work for us going forward as we're going to the next title and next title and next title. But in that initial phase, we were able to work out a lot of kinks in the process. But now going forward, every project has got to get these phases worked out. So I lined it out like this: like the internal testing that you're going to do on your own game, have people play it themselves. You're going to move on eventually to like a beta test group, and this might be, you know, other buddies that have the same game. You start sharing the boards around to them to get them trying it out, and then maybe find some locations and things like that that are friendly to you putting in a beta project in their place. From that, you know, as you're moving forward, you're going to get into what I call like the early adopters phase. And this is the part that, like, you know, we watched, like I said, Pedretti did a great job with this. They were selling kits to people that were eager to be involved in those early process. Because again, you may take a kit and put it in your game and it might not work. And that sounds scary, but you got to think of it as like, we got to spread this around more and more different games that we haven't seen before. You might find that this game has some weird mod that the owner of that game didn't even know they had. Now they're realizing that, like, okay, that thing, that hacked up solution was playing weird with our hardware, so we should, you know, see what that means. So that early adopter phase, I guess the product side of me always wants a product to go out like in the best shape possible, no issues, all that stuff. The challenge is when you're releasing the stuff on these ancient platforms, there's just stuff we've never seen before. So I was so concerned and stressed about the idea of like people getting a product and being upset about it. But for whatever reason in the pinball space, and maybe it's just what we're used to with pinball, is like you can get a game and drive it from one location to another and it quits working in that transport step, you know? So there's a lot of people that are very eager to be a part of the testing process, be a part of the working the kinks out and stuff like that. So what we've been encouraging is in this early adopter phase, really highlight that, like, hey, we're looking for people that want to like roll their sleeves up, try some things out, maybe share some log files back and forth. But I was very impressed by the pinball community's willingness to say, I'll give it a shot. Like, I know that, hey, I trust that we'll get there in the end. So if I can be a part of that journey, people are pretty into that. So I've loved all the support that we do as fast tends to be an escalated support for our customers. So for example, like Sean, who works with Pedretti, he does all the support for all the Rudy's Nightmare thing. That guy has my bat phone number because I know when he needs help, he has implemented and tested every single thing we have learned along the way already. So he's not calling me up going, hey, this guy's game won't work. He's going, here's this guy who has this game, who we've done all these different things, and this is one thing we've never seen before. Let's figure it out. And I appreciate that so much because, again, they're aggregating all the feedback, all the use cases, all the things they've supported down to this one thing that it's like, how do we figure this out? And of course, from an engineering side of things, this is what we want to see. We want to see, like, what have we not identified before? What weird nuanced thing exists? And that can be stuff that we can use to support new kits going forward, new projects going forward. It just gives us a better baseline for successful projects. So I think that, like, I really encourage people to, and this is something that we'll share with people all over the place, is like find those early adopters, the ones that like, they're going to buy the kits, they're going to trust that you're going to get them to the end goal, but you'll find those allies that want to be a part of the success of that project. And I guarantee you that if you make another kit, you decided this project was successful enough, you want to do it again, those same people will be raising their hand to be next in line. And you can decide as you move along and you find your early adopter beta testers, you start to bring them into the inner circle. They learn in advance which games are going to be coming out. So they'll go around and find games, bring them home, get them tuned up, getting ready for your kit when it comes out. So that early adopter phase is something that I'm really encouraging people that are making these kits to highlight, because, you know, if you're a casual user who's like buying a kit, wanting to plug it into the game and just hope it works, those might not be your early adopter users. And I think that we usually encourage people to say, like, you know, if you're going to buy a mod for your game, are you comfortable putting it in? And we get a lot of people say, oh, I don't put it in myself. I order a few pizzas, get a couple growlers of beer and invite my pinball friends over, and we all install the new mods in my game. And it's a shared experience. Everybody's happy with that. This is that same kind of thing. You know, find those people that you know and trust that want to hang out and have some fun with pinball. Those are your early adopters, you know? So I think that that's the big phase that I'm definitely pushing right now. I've talked about it for 10 minutes now. But then beyond that, you're going to get into your general public, okay? So the general public getting the game, by the time you're releasing to the general public, you should have your documentation on point. You should have YouTube install videos ready to go. You should have walked them through that experience with zoomed in photos of this connector unplugged, this one goes in its place. all that kind of stuff. Like make it as detailed as possible, because you got to remember, you just spent a year, maybe 2, working on this project. It's muscle memory. You don't even look at the plugs, you know right where they go. You trust the keys, all that kind of stuff. The public isn't going to have had that experience yet. And so you got to remember, I look at things from the spectrum of like complexity for pinball work. So you start with like the low end, where it's like changing out LEDs. Okay, anybody can do that. You move up the ranks a little bit more, where you might be changing out flipper coils. All right, then you get to maybe I'm going to install a color DMD in my game, you know, that kind of thing. These kits are like over here. So again, for the casual user, you know, again, the instructions, if they're well defined, make it easy. What are you doing? I'm taking this existing board out. We've designed our boards to fit right in the same place. So you put it right back in its place, put the connectors on the same ports where they were. You should be in pretty good shape, but your documentation should support that. And I think that if your documentation supports that, then there's going to be things that are unique about your case, where you picked a certain PC that might have a different plug of a different color, a different length, that kind of a thing. So anything that you can do to support that in photos, walkthroughs, videos, all that kind of stuff, again, that's almost like you vetting your project as well. If you can turn it into a nice, elegant video that shows how to be installed, then that can be something that can be shared by anybody, and they can do the same thing. So the general public is excited about adding new things to their pinball machines. What I have to remind people of is, please don't start with buying one of these 2.0 kits and use that as a way to fix a problem in your existing game. Because if there's anything that, I'm not going to say wasted time on, people have spent a lot of time on that was probably not the right place to spend it on, was finding out way down the line that like this game that they put a kit in, it didn't work to start with. They were hoping that putting these new boards in would fix the problem. And so that's why we say, like, make sure that you encourage your customers to get their game retail or location ready, 100% tuned up before they put the kits in it. Because the time that you're going to spend supporting your customers really should be focused on the things that you've never seen before. You know, maybe there was an era of that game that was released where they changed the wire colors, or the connectors were a little bit different on that game. Now you've learned something. You need to go back, put that in your documentation, and note that, hey, we've seen some users who have connectors that are orange and half the users have them that are white or something like that. Anything that you can do to let a customer self-identify their problem is going to keep you from getting a set of emails or following a pinside thread or something like that to maintain your project. So again, you can go from exciting, loving your project, you do internal testing, your beta testing, your early adopters. The general public is going to find all the things that you never knew before. And I think that that's the part that we'd say, really be sure that you budget into this project, doing the work in advance to make the support you're going to deal with later on easier. So, anyways, that's kind of the launch process of going, or sorry, the deployment project. The deployment of a project's got to go from getting it working, get it beta tested, find your early adopters, get it to the general public. So there's some steps in between there. So getting down to that early adopters phase, that's assuming that the project has been approved for release. So your license holders, in this case, Planetary with the Williams Bally projects, is going to want to have a retail ready kit sent to them. Again, that's totally fair. The project that they're going to be seeing, that their holograms that approve these products, they want to get the one that you would have shipped to a customer. So this is not a box wrapped up in random bubble wrap with some tape labels, all that kind of stuff. Like, make this into the unboxing experience that people would have if they bought the product from you. So you can take a look at what have been done with some of these other kits out there and see that, like, you know, like I love the Rudy's Nightmare box. When that showed up, again, this was the first project that we worked on as a 2.0 project. When they sent me the kit in the full box with the logos all on the front, I opened it up. Everything's in nice boxes. The Translight's in there. I mean, it was so impressive. It was very nice to see all that effort spent into a retail ready product. But this is what you need to be thinking about on top of all these things, is like, what are you eventually going to be sending to customers, and what does that look like? And I think that, you know, you can spend time with the, you know, U-lines and all those different things that make boxes. I mean, I love the process of packaging and standardizing on packaging and stuff like that. That's just a weird thing that I enjoy. So I think that's maybe why I was so impressed by that. But again, so I'm kind of running all over the place here, and I'm jumping from topic to topic, but I think that, you know, when you look at all that we're trying to do is fast to make sure that your project is stable and is ready to go to market. We want to get your product to be as approval ready as possible. So again, when you go and send a kit to Planetary Pinball, they're going to open it up. They already know that we're all working together, so they're going to trust fast guys have looked at this kit's ready to go. They're going to look at your package and say, this is impressive. Customers would be appreciative of how well this is packaged, and look at your support documentation and say, like, customers are ready to take this product and install it in their game. So distributors are carrying these things now. So again, you're also going to look at like getting these projects to distributors. And again, they are going to do their support on the front line, but again, they want to use your documentation to make sure their customers are happy as well. So, so I guess probably, I don't know how long I've been talking now. I'd say probably the last thing that I'd address with all this stuff too is you got to look at like the economics of these things. So the way that it usually works out is there is the physical cost of all these things. Boards from us, PCs, displays, all those things. All those things have a cost. Obviously, volume purchasing, the more you buy, the better. It gets volume price advantages. But then there's costs associated with like the emulation, the software support, and the licensing support that goes with those things. Again, we want to get as many products to market as possible, but there's a lot of work that we do to make sure that your game is tuned up, ready to go. And that support that we're doing, like I said, that escalation, when you've done everything you can to support your customer and get it working in their game, you need to know that we're there to answer that set of questions that you couldn't support. So that's really important. And we've tried to come up with a model that makes sure everybody has the right kind of incentives to make sure these things are successful and everyone's motivated to get these products to market. So that's where, like, when you start looking at the cost of things, I mean, we'll start to, I'm daydreaming in real time here, but I think that there's things we can complement these kind of talks with some website documentation and workflows that say, like, here's a calculator that can help you can determine, what is your budget for your game? How much money you're going to spend on graphics and artwork and music composition and, making new translights and all those things. While I was taking a drink and waiting for the announcements to finish, I was just kind of looking back over the notes. I think that, like, one of the things that I guess I want to throw into this too is like these projects are cool. These projects are the kind of things that, like, I enjoy seeing what people can create when, like, things get, I guess, take down the barriers of what it takes to, like, bring something to life, and I think that, like, a lot of what I get to do on a daily basis is work with, like, the smartest people I know to solve problems that get you back to the creative part that you actually are interested in. Nobody stands, well, this is not true. I was gonna say, nobody stands over a game and goes, I want to solve power supplies and inputs and outputs and stuff like that, but I guess we do. But people that are really interested in making these projects have looked at a game that they've thought, man, if I could do more with this, I think this would be a really great, I could add more code to this game and make it a really great game. And I think that that's the part that, I spend most of my time, like, kind of trying to make opportunities exist. With our relationship with Planetary Pinball, like, it was very nice for us to be able to say, like, okay, we all want more games getting made. How can we make this into something that makes it worthwhile for all of us? So we've been able to solve it from the engineering side of things, and really, like, moving forward from the support of these platforms. It's even pushing forward now towards helping people, like, these kind of basically indie pinball developers who want to, like, bring new life to pinball, do more things in pinball. The entrepreneur-minded side of me says, we can solve the engineering side, we can help with supply chain things, but then also trying to encourage people to look at things in a way that says, how do you make this project viable? And there's little tricks and stuff like that, and basically numbers and things like that I've looked at to say, like, if you look at a game, and one of the challenges with these projects is, like, your total addressable market is the number of games that were ever made, So I came up with some rule of thumb that we were looking at as we were even evaluating, like, which titles would be appealing, and said, like, if you can look at the number of games that were made and figure, of all the games that were ever made, a portion of those still exist. A subset of those are in a state that you could actually put a kit in. A subset of those are owned by people who would actually spend money on a kit to add new life to it. And I mean, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So when you look at the time and energy it takes to build a game, and then the cost that goes with it, as far as, like, hiring people to do sound and graphics and things like that, or maybe that's the part you do yourself. I think that there's ways that we can streamline as many things as we can to make actually getting the physical product done. But then you've got to look at it as you're basically like your own little game studio. What is your content budget? What is your development budget? What does your support model look like? All those kinds of things. And I think it's a really interesting puzzle to solve. So I think everything that we're trying to do is to make all the things that we can standardize, systematize, like, make more consistent, make all that as easy as possible so that you can focus on making really cool games. Let us worry about supply chain problems with microprocessors changing or all those different things like that. We've really done our part to make sure that like all the board sets and stuff like that that go into these games are maintained going forward and stuff too. So if somebody bought a kit from you and is running our fast WPC 89 controller, and 5 years from now somebody was tweaking things in their game and somehow damaged that board, they'd be able to buy whatever the latest version of that board is from us, because we're focused on making sure that like that model is supported going forward, you know? So if the processors that we use now were not available and we picked something else, we'd make sure that the software interface to our boards was consistent. Take the other one out, put it in, your kit should still run. So these are the things that we're thinking about. It's like making sure that like the longevity of your product is still there. You're not buying a, you know, a cobbled together random set of things. You know, we want to make sure that like if you're spending good money on a kit that people put a lot of effort into, we want to make sure that that thing is supported going forward. Because again, this might be something that you do once, you love it, it was a labor of love and you never want to do it again, or you do it, you had a lot of fun with it, you sold a bunch, you had some fun, and you keep doing it. You know, that's what we want to be here, to be able to be that kind of engineering support to make sure that the product that you make is presented on a silver platter to the license holders, and they want you to keep doing things over and over and over again. So anyways, this is just me kind of rattling off and trying to capturing this on video as a way to kind of, I don't know, capture all the conversation I've been having over and over and over during these shows. But our goal is when we get back in, you know, after we catch our breath here for the show, we'll take a lot of this information, get some online content, stuff like that in place, and some workflows, some diagrams, whatever it takes to help anybody make the decision to go make a project like this. So, all right, that's all I got. Does anybody have any questions for anything? So I'll totally answer it.
First steps. Like if I just had the idea,
okay,
maybe I want to do this, what do I do next?
So this will be the first wave of what we're going to do this summer, is really make that first wave into just get a game. Don't worry about licensing it. Don't worry about licensing titles, anything like that. Just get a board set from us, follow our documentation instructions, put it in your game, see if you like it. You know, there's open source frameworks like the Mission Pinball framework that's designed to speed up the process of actually getting to the game code that you like. But what we really wanted to do with our whole board set was not require you to use any one certain software framework, any one certain like OS, like programming language, anything you want. Like whatever language you're into. I mean, if you're a Unity programmer, like use Unity. You know, if you write in Unreal, like see if that works. You know, I've written game code in very simple game code in JavaScript using a browser plugin. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to get into it, but like use what you know. And I think that like finding the thing that attracts you to pinball, we don't want to make you have to go and relearn everything you need to. So getting one of our board sets into a game, that would be that first starting point, you know. And then join our Slack community. Like we've got a group of users, they're all fast owners, and you know, these are all people that actually have skin in the game and want to make pinball. So getting started with the conversion kit things that I've talked about here. We're going to be putting more information about that out this summer, and find some ways to get you all involved. So